It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing, it is another full edit, so sit back, relax, and stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It's another full edit today with the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. Today's image was sent to me by Chris Sveen. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Chris. This image was taken at Moulton Falls Park, Yakult, Washington. And welcome back, everyone, to another TK Friday. Hey, if you have an image you'd like me to edit on a TK Friday, feel free to send it to me. In the description below the video, you'll find a contact me. Just click on that. You can send me an email, and then we could talk about editing one of your images on a TK Friday. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, you can download the image and the PDF notes and give this edit a try out for yourself. It's a great way of learning how to use the TK9 plugin for Photoshop because every image is different and requires different editing processes. So feel free to download that image. You'll find Dropbox links in the description below this video for the image as well as the PDF notes. Don't forget to click on more to open up that description or you'll never see those links. And by the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, you can save 15% off the TK9 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. Use my promo code DK15. That gets you 15% off of everything. Not only are you saving money, but you're supporting the joy of editing with Dave Kelly when you use that promo code DK15. Thank you all for using my promo code. I really appreciate it. Well then, let's get started. I always start out my edits in Lightroom doing just basic adjustments. I want a relatively flat image going into Photoshop. I always like to use a linear profile, which I did on this image. As you can see right here, I just do some basic adjustments. Again, I want to keep it relatively flat. As far as detail, I just have a little bit of sharpening and masking on here. No noise reduction, just some color noise reduction. As far as lens corrections, I always check on remove chromatic aberration as well as enable profile corrections. And I did do a crop on this image. It was a pretty aggressive crop, as you can see here. I just straightened it up a little bit and did my crop. Now, as you can see, I have some really light rocks here. So when I was adjusting my white and black point, I was making sure I definitely don't want to clip those highlights. And these are already so light, so I even pulled back on the whites a little bit more than I usually do. But there's no clipping, and now we're ready to go into Photoshop. At this point, I just right-click on the image, go to Edit In, and edit in Photoshop 2024, but I'm already there. And here we are in Photoshop. The first thing I like to do is give this image some balance and contrast, and to do that, I come up to the multi-mask panel, click on this button to go into luminosity masking, and I always like to use a midtones 3. And the only reason I'm using it, it will protect the darkest darks and the lightest lights from getting clipped, and I just use it for protection. And then I output it to a color grading tool by clicking on this button right here. And here's the color grading tool. Now I'm going to start out with shadows. I'm going to click this button right here. This will let me adjust my shadows. Now this is a brightness slider. You can lighten shadows or darken shadows. I do want to darken my shadows. Now when you drag this slider, you don't see a change until you release the click of your mouse. So I'm going to take this over to right there, -33. And now we're going to go to midtones. So I'll click on the middle button and I want to darken the midtones just a little bit. So I'll drag this brightness slider to the left over to right there, -15. And also these rocks. Now we have to really deal with these rocks and I'll show you how we do it. It took me a while to figure this out. But what we're going to do next is go to the highlights. So we'll click this highlight button and I just want to reduce those highlights just to get rid of some of the lightness off the rocks. We won't get rid of too much, but right here, -20. Now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. So that's a starting point. I like the way the image is. It's really not totally balanced because we have these rocks we have to deal with because our eyes always want to go to the lightest part of the image. And right now it's like your eyes go right here. And that's not where I want you to go to. I want to lead my viewer up to this beautiful bridge here and also the reflection of the bridge in the water. I tried all kind of different ways to tone down these rocks. You know, I tried luminosity masking, zone masks. I tried everything, but I came up with a way that we can deal with it. And let me show you what I did. It involves another color grading tool. So right now we can see our color grading tool that is adjusted for this layer, but click the plus you'll add another color grading tool. And now what I want to do is put this into a multiply blend mode to darken the entire image, so we'll click multiply. Now what I'm doing is only looking at these rocks, but I need to make a few more adjustments and some color grading. I'm going to start out by clicking on the midtone button, and I just want to darken up the midtones to over to right here, a -26, and I'm only looking at the rocks. Now I know the rest of the image doesn't look good, and the rocks are darker than what you would think they should be, but there's a reason for that, and you'll see, so stick with me. I also want to add some warm color grade here, so with the color grading tool, I'm still in midtones, and you see the tip of my cursor. Wherever you click, you're going to drop a point, and I think maybe right about here. Now, I also want to adjust the highlights, but before I do that, you see this hex code number right here? I'm going to click on this and copy it. Command or Control C to copy that number, because I want to use that same color grade for the highlights. So now I'm going to click on the highlight button, and I just want to darken up the highlights a little bit over to right there, -8. Now I'm going to click on this field, and I'm just going to paste that number in. On a Mac, it's Command V. It could be the same on a PC, only Control V, I'm not sure, but I'm doing a Command V to paste that number in, and then you click this button to accept it. And now I have the same color grade on both areas. And so now if I shut this layer off, you can see there's the image, and now it looks like this, and I know it looks horrible, but wait, there's more. The next thing you want to do is click this button right here. It's going to put a black mask on this layer to hide what I just did. But now here's what we do. I'm going to get a white paintbrush, so we can click on this button on the combo or CX panel to get a white brush. I want my opacity at 20%. If your opacity is not at 20%, you can type your 2 key. That's a shortcut. And all I want to do with a nice soft edge brush is start to paint on that adjustment. See that? And with that really low opacity, I can be, careful just to build it up just in the areas that I want to build it up. And I'm just painting. And now every time you lift your brush and you paint again, you'll darken it some more. So I'm just using this technique just to darken down these rocks. Now, it takes a little bit of time here, but just paint over the rocks. I'm missing the trees and so on, or the shrubs, whatever you want to call them, and just painting. Now here I may darken that a little bit more, come down in here, darken it. I'm going to finish this up, but you see what I'm doing? I'm just painting and painting, and then I may come back and go over some other areas again. But I found this to be a very effective technique just to really get this adjusted the way I want it, and also to give it some color grade, to warm up these rocks a little bit, because I think they look a lot nicer when they're a little bit on the warm side. Even up in here, I'll get some of these rocks. I'm going to finish this up, and I'll get back to you and show you my final result. I'm back. Now this is before the adjustment. Now let me turn this layer on, and here is after. But see how that really tones those down? Now remember, you also have this opacity here for the layer. You could, if it's too strong, you could take this and pull it back a little bit, depending what you like. But I'm going to leave that a little on the darker side, because again, I'm trying to train our eyes up to this bridge. Now, the reason I made the initial color grading adjustment so dark is because I knew I was going to paint this on at a low opacity and then just build it up and get it just the way I like it. Now, if we take a look at this mask here by clicking the double arrow button on the combo or CX panel, you can see that's where I've painted. You can see some areas are lighter, some areas are darker gray. I know it looks horrible here, but the final result looks like this. And with that soft edge brush, as you can see with the nice soft edges here, everything just blends in really nicely. But there it is. But now let's click the before after button. So we started here and we end up here. And now I think the overall balance of the image is more in line. Now, the next thing I want to do, I still want to work in these rocky areas and also in the reflections of the rocks in the water. And I just want to do a little bit of burning to some of the darker areas just to bring out some more sculpting to the rocky area. And I think it'll look really nice. And let me show you how I do it. There's many different ways of burning with the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. I could use a luminosity mask and I'll put that to a burn tool, painting through a selection, but I'm doing something a little different here. This time I'll go to my combo panel. You could use the CX panel. It doesn't matter. They're the same. They just look different. Look for your burn tool. And again, I always tell you it has two sides, left side 50% gray layer, right side transparent pixel layer. There's merit for using both sides. In this case, it doesn't really matter and so you could use either side. So what I'll do is use the right side. So we'll click on the right side, and you can see we have a transparent pixel layer in the soft light blend mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Blend If to help me target dark areas. Now I could click this Blend If button, but I'm going to choose to use this button up here. This button is designed to make Blend If masks, but I'm not going to make a Blend If mask. So I'm going to click this button, but you may say, well, why are you doing that, Dave? Well, it helps you to visualize what you're going to burn. Now, I know I want dark tones, so I'm going to click on Darks 1, and then I'll click on Darks 2. And that is the area that I want to target. I'm looking at these rocks and then the shadows in the water. So I want Darks 2. Now, here's a little tip. If you want to output this Darks 2 to that burn layer, but you only want to use Blend If and you don't want to output a mask, all you have to do is hold your Shift key down and then click on this button right here. It'll add Blend If to that layer. So I'll click this button, and now you can see there is that Blend If. And if I double click right here, you can see there is the Blend If adjustment, right? I'm just going to click cancel for now, but I have Blend If targeting Darks 2 on this layer. By the way, you can also click this Edit Blend If button, and there you can see there's that Darks 2 right there. And then I could come in here and readjust or choose Darks 3, Darks 4. So we have different options, but Darks 2 is going to work. I'm just going to click X, but I do have Blend If on the layer. And now with a nice soft edge brush, right now I'm at 20% opacity. I'm going to test this out. I'm just going to paint across here. Now again, every time I paint and lift, it gets a little bit darker. And remember that Darks 2 is really protecting me, that it's only going to allow me to hit the Dark 2 areas. So I'm just going over some of the darker areas, and even in the water down here, you see this? I'm going to go ahead and darken some of these shadows. It just gives it a little nicer look, and over this rock here. But you get the drift. Lift your brush, paint again, you'll make it darker. And just look for the shadow areas you want. You know, you're the artist and you decide what you want to make dark or not. I'll finish this out because I don't want you to sit here and waste your time watching me paint all this, but you get the drift. You know what I'm doing, and now you know how to do it. I'll finish it up, and then I'll get right back to you and show you the result. And I am back. And again, the key to burning or dodging is to use a lower opacity so you can build the effect up slowly. Now, here is the burn layer with a Darks 2 Blend If on it. Let me go ahead and turn it on. Right now we don't have the burning. Now let me turn it on. See how that just sculpts those rocks, and it gives you some really nice definition there on the rocks. Now, if the effect's too strong, you can always take the opacity and pull it back just to adjust in just the amount you want. But I'm going to leave it up at 100%. And now I'm studying my image and seeing what I can do next. And I'm looking at these lines in the water that come in here due to the long exposure. I believe this was like a 13-second long exposure on this image. So what I'm going to do to target these tones, I want to lighten them up just so they, not too much, but just so you can really know they're there. I'm going to use a zone mask. I'm going to click on the zone mask button. The reason I'm using a zone mask, it's a really good mask to use if you really want to target a certain tone. And I'm going to go right here. See this tone right here? The picker tool comes up, the color picker tool, click right here and click OK. And there are those tones. But we still need to fine tune this mask. But what I want to do is take this slider here, I call this my tightening slider, and adjust it to the left to really tighten that up, to really just target those tones. So I'm going to go over to right here. I think that is good. See how it's isolated? These light areas, remember in a mask, the light areas will get the adjustment. The dark areas will not get the adjustment. Now remember, I want to lighten, so what I'll use is a dodge tool. And again, the dodge tool has two sides, left side 50% gray, right side transparent pixel layer. It doesn't matter, use either side. I'll use the right side, so I'll click on this, and you'll notice we have a selection indicator, and that is telling us we will be painting through a selection. So that zone mask we created is going to help us. Now, with my dodge tool, I'm at 20% opacity, and all I'm going to do here is, with a smaller brush, just start to paint. Can be actually a little bit bigger here. Start to paint over any of these light areas like this. You see that? Now, if you overdo, if you're using a transparent pixel layer, you could use an eraser tool to blend and, erase whatever you need to do. So I'm just going here and grabbing all these. I'll finish this off, and then I'll get back to you and show you my result. Again, sometimes I lift that brush, and like there, I lifted, I'm painting again, I lifted it, paint again, so that gets a little lighter. But this lets you build it up slowly, and I really like this technique. It's really a very effective technique using that low opacity. I'm going to pause the video and I'll get right back. And I'm back. Now this is pre-dodging. Let me turn this layer on, and this is after I dodge. But you see how these nice light lines in here from the long exposure come up. Now, if you overshot, like if I shut this off, you can see I may have lightened up some of these reflections of the foliage in the water. So I can grab my eraser tool. You can type E to get your eraser tool at 100% opacity with a nice soft edge brush. You know, I could just paint that off. You see, like that. So you could fix it up if you have any areas that were in that same value as the lines in the water. So you could paint those off, but just like that. You can also lower that opacity if you need to blend a little bit. But again, let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. And don't forget, you always have the opacity on the layer. If it's too strong, you could pull it back a little bit, but I'll leave it at 100%. Boy, this image requires a lot of hand painting, but you got to do what you got to do. So let's see what's next. Now, I love the bridge up here, but I love the reflection. It's almost making a full circle here. So I'd like to bring up the bridge reflection in the water. And to do that, we're going to use a dodge tool. So I'm going to my combo panel and clicking on the right side of the dodge tool. I'll use the help of Blend Diff, so I'll click on the Edit Blend Diff button. And if you'll notice right here, you see this button? This works kind of like a zone mask. It lets you pick a zonal area. So if you click this, a color picker comes up, and I could sample a color in this bridge reflection, like right here, and I'll click OK. And now you can see there's where that value sits in the magenta area right there. It's a darker tone. But I noticed when I used the color picker, it changed my white paint swatch to the color of this color that I picked. So what I need to do is change this back to white. So what we can do is click on our white brush tool, and now we're back to white. I was going to mention that to Tony the other day, but I forgot to. It might be a bug. He may have to address that. But if that happens to you, just click on your white brush tool and you'll be back to white. And now with a nice soft edge brush, I'm just going to paint along this circle area on the bridge here. Just like this, just to lighten it up, just so our eyes can see that we have this beautiful reflection in the water, just like that. Now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. See how that just really pulls it out? And if I overdid it, I could take my opacity and pull it back a little bit. And I might do that. I might just pull it back a little bit. So again, before and after. Now there's the other part of the bridge here. We're going to lighten that up too. I'll use another layer using the same technique. I'll grab another dodge tool. I'm just clicking on the right side. I'm going to grab this picker by clicking on it. And now I'm going to sample some of the darker tone in the water, like maybe right about here, and click OK. Now let's see if that swatch changes color when I click OK. Yeah, it does. So all we need to do now is click on the white brush. But you can see that's where that zone is hitting, right in that area right there. And now with that 10% opacity again, with a nice soft edge brush. Now my brush may appear larger in the video than it actually is due to the editing software. But I'm just going to paint along here and bring out this area of the bridge too. Just like so. Just so we can see that. Now let me shut this layer off. Here is the before and here's the after. And again, if it's too light, we can take the opacity and maybe just pull it back a little bit. Right there, like 69. Let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. Let me shut both of these layers off. This is before the bridge reflection got lightened, and this is after. But I think that really helps. I really like the fact that it's like a completed circle, but that little lightening lets you know there's this nice little circle shape in this image. Now as I study the image, I'm thinking some mid-tone contrast. So pop up the mid-tone contrast, which can be quite beautiful, and pop the color a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to click X to close the Edit Blend Diff panel. Nothing changes on the Edit Blend Diff layers. I'll click on the Luminosity Mask button. I'm going to use a mid-tone mask. We have mid-tones 1, 2, and 3. This is a darker one. They get lighter as they go, but they're all midtones. I'm going to click on Midtones 2. Output it to a Curves Adjustment layer. Now, I don't know if you know this, but we do have presets with the Curves Adjustment layer. I'm going to click right here in the drop down. I'm going to use medium contrast RGB. I'm going to click on this. And right there you can see it. We have that little bit of a mid-tone contrast boost. I'll shut it off. There's before, and I'll turn this layer back on. And now we see that little mid-tone contrast boost with that little pop of color. I really like it. Now as I study the image, I like to darken all the shadows up in this area, everywhere but in the water, maybe a little bit on the reflections. And to do that, I'm going to grab a curves adjustment layer. So I'll click this button right here. I'm going to click this black mask button to put a hide all mask on it. Click multiply to go into the multiply blend mode. We don't see an effect there because we have the black mask. Then I'm going to come up and click on the luminosity mask button and find the dark tones. Here's darks 1, here's darks 2, here's darks 3. Now all the light areas up in here will get darker as I paint over them, but I'm going to output that to a black mask painting with a white brush, this button right here. I'm going to change my brush opacity to 50%. So right now it's at 10. I'll type my 5 key. And now with a nice soft edge brush, I'm just going to paint at 50% opacity. I'll get into the water a little bit here, but over the entire image, just like this up in the top. I can stay away from the rocks down in here because I've already worked on those. Now I can lift the brush and paint again to darken certain areas, and maybe up in here a little bit, over in here, like that. Let me shut this layer off. Here is the before, and here is the after. I'll continue working on this and I will get back to you because I don't want to waste all your time. Again, there's a lot of painting in this image, as I said earlier. So I'll get right back to you. And I am back. Now, right now, you're seeing the before. I darkened up the shadow areas up in this area. Let me turn this layer on, and here is the after. So again, the before, the after. And as always, you can pull back in the opacity if it is too strong. Now, for the next step, I'm just studying the image, and I'm looking for any areas on the image that are too light, because again, I want to pull your eye over to this bridge. So what I'm going to do, and I found this was the most effective way to do it, get a brightness contrast adjustment layer by clicking this button. We see it right here. And what I want to do is take the brightness down, and I'm going to take it down pretty strong to somewhere like right about here, minus 53. And then I'm going to pop up my contrast. Now, I know this looks kind of weird, but I'm going to take my contrast up to right about here. But what I want to do is put a black mask on this layer by clicking this button right here. And now with a 10% opacity brush, white brush, right now I have a black brush, so I'm going to click the white brush button. I'll type my 1 key to get 10% brush opacity. I'm looking for any areas that are too light, keeping me from looking at this bridge. I'm going to darken it up a little bit. So on these rocks, I'm just going to come here and just paint like this. It's only 10% opacity. And remember, my brightness adjustment is very strong. And that is strong in the way of darkening. And I'm just looking again for any light areas, and if I find something that's bugging me, I'll just tone it down with that brightness adjustment, the negative brightness adjustment. I'm going to pause the video and finish this up, and I'll get right back to you. And I am back. So this is before I darkened any area I thought was too light, and now let me turn this layer back on. Here is after, but see how it just balances things out further. And I found this brightness contrast adjustments very effective for doing stuff like this. So if you have little nasty areas that you just want to tone down, a brightness adjustment can be your very best friend, and you don't need any masking whatsoever. Now, when I study this image, it's too dark, so I need to lighten it up, and the best way to do that, I feel, is to grab an exposure adjustment. So click this button on the TK Multi-Mask panel, and what I want to do is click this fill to highlight it, make it active, hold your shift key down, hit your up arrow. You'll go up 1/10 of a stop at a time. So here's 1/10 of a stop, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, 5, and 6. Now I like it at 6, but it's making my dark areas too light. So what I'll do is click my Edit Blend If button right here and click on No Darks 2, and that drops out the really dark darks. And so now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. So it did need that little bit of an exposure adjustment. Couple steps and we'll be done. It needs a vignette, so I'm going to come to my TK Actions. Mine are already open. If yours aren't, click your TK Action button. Click on vignette. This is just a basic vignette. A Gaussian blur dialog comes up. I always just click OK. I don't change anything here. And what I want to do is protect my darkest dark. So I'm going to go and click on No Darks 1. I think I want it a bit darker, so I'll increase the layer opacity up to 50%. So let me shut this vignette off. Here's before and here's after. And I like that. One more step and we're done. At the end of an edit, I always like to try out the color loom action for color luminosity. So let's click on this button here. And what I want to do is just go through all the different colors, and this will lighten or darken the colors, okay? So let's start with reds. And what I want to do is reduce my reds a little bit to somewhere right about there. I think I'll decrease my yellows a little bit to maybe right about here. I think I'll lighten up my greens a little bit. You can go both ways just to see which way is working. I decided to lighten them a little bit. And now we'll go to cyans, darken the cyans just a little wee bit to right there, 57. Let's see what we can do with blues. Okay, see how the blues affecting like the lines in the water and back in this area here. I think we're going to take that to maybe right there, like a -7. And now magenta. Yeah, there's some magenta areas getting affected. You can see like on these rocks down here. I'm going to darken that up a bit to maybe there. Now let's shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. Just a nice little tweaking. And I think we're done. Now if we want to, we could come back to the exposure adjustment layer, click on that, highlight this exposure field by clicking on it. And let me hold my shift key down and take it up 1 more tenth of a stop. 1, let's go another one, 2, and let's try one more, 9/10 of a stop. Now I really like this exposure increase, but if you recall, I used a No Darks 2 to protect my darkest darks from getting too light. But now I feel some of these lighter tones in these rocks and up here on the bridge are getting too light. You can only ever use one of these buttons here on this row at a time, and right now I'm using No Darks 2. But I have a preset, and I'm going to click on this preset button, and I have a preset for No Darks 2 and No Lights 2, so I'm going to click this. And now you see it tones these rocks in the bridge down here. And like I said, you can only use one button at a time. So what you can do, normally these two handles will be the whole way over here to the left. So if I click on this handle, you could jot this number down. It's 155. You could drag this handle to the left to 155. And if I click on this handle, it is 235. Okay, so drag it to 235. Actually move this a little bit, so I'm going to pull it back to 155. So you can drag those. But then you could save it out as a preset. All you have to do is click this button here and click the plus. Give that preset a name like No Darks 2, No Lights 2, and click OK. I'm going to click cancel, and then you'll have a preset, so you don't have to do that all the time, okay? So that's a little tip for you. Now, let's do an overall before and after. I'm going to click this button on my combo panel for before after, so I'll click it. There's before. We started here, very flat, really light rocks, and now we end up here. And I'm really happy with this edit, and I hope you give it a try. Well, there it is, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's full edit. Hey, by the way, the TK Magic Mixer, I don't know if you saw some of my videos, is on sale to the end of this month. It's only $10. You can use it for color or black and white conversions. You'll find it over at the TK web store. You can use the promo code MAGIC25 and save 25% off. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Click all to receive all notifications. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.